Hearts of Iron IV. I've got almost too much to say about this game, and all things considered, this should probably be a 6-hour-long video. Unfortunately, I've spent so much time playing this game over the past week that I've barely had time to make a review video. I guess that's something that this Hearts of Iron game got so right that Hearts of Iron 3 just kinda missed for me. It's a sandbox that doesn't overly focus on micromanagement, and you can get lost in it, whereas Hearts of Iron 3 was more of a recreation of the most recognizable conflict in history, although there were sandbox elements to a degree. I guess that doesn't really explain much if you haven't played either of these games, so allow me to try and explain as best as I can what really makes Hearts of Iron 4 so damn good. Let's start with a rather large list of changes to the usual Hearts of Iron formula. First and foremost, this is probably a divisive opinion, but I did not like the logistics system of Hearts of Iron 3 at all. Having to connect brigades and HQs and all that nonsense into a working force was just a bit too complicated in my opinion. It turned the micromanagement up to 11 when it should have been a 9. Hearts of Iron 2 and Darkest Hour still had supply systems and intense micromanagement, but it was done on a simplistic interface, and it didn't require you to worry about dragging around dozens of HQs everywhere your soldiers marched. If Hearts of Iron was turn-based, I could probably see a system like this working, but in real time, it just feels more like a gimmick to encumber the player and raise the difficulty. Hearts of Iron 4 replaces this system with a much more interesting, if slightly imperfect system. Now commanders are given a set of army and battle plan creation tools. The process is simple. You select a number of divisions, click the Create Army button, set a front line, and then have access to offensive plans, garrison plans, etc., etc. These plans can then be executed by the AI, so a whole theater can basically be conquered and controlled, all by a simple click of a mouse. And what's better, if the plan goes awry, there's a simple stop button that pauses unit attacks and forces the AI to restructure along the newly conquered territory. Don't think this completely replaces micromanagement, because you're still able to control units on an individual basis or in selection groups that don't affect the movements and attacks of the rest of the units in the army. While the overall idea and execution are pretty fantastic, there are a few hiccups, like the AI sometimes not advancing when a front is left completely undefended. This is the most common problem and is generally solved by direct player intervention. Sometimes the frontline drawing tool can mess up, causing units to stack up on the wrong provinces. Again, this can be solved by creating a new army and resetting your front line. But truly, in summation, I love the new battle plan system. It really takes a load off of the player and allows you to just watch your generals take control of the war. It especially comes in handy when you're fighting in multiple theaters, and at times is an absolute godsend. Air wars have also become a bit more streamlined in Hearts of Iron 4. No longer do you directly control aircraft like your land divisions. Rather, air wings are given their own panel, which shows where planes are, what they're doing, their effectiveness, and it even keeps track of how many are lost or how many kills you've made. You're probably wondering how this works. Well, simply put, you assign planes to an air wing, which is restricted by type of plane, and then you assign that air wing to an air region, and then rebase them to the nearest air base. Once you've got all that set up, you can choose a mission for them depending on their type. So, air superiority and air interception for fighters, strategic bombing and ground support and so on and so forth for your bombers. Planes will then conduct their missions as long as they are still alive in the area or until all your enemies are dead. You can customize their behavior to a degree by adjusting when they conduct missions and so on and so forth. If your planes are losing the air war in a region, you can even ground them to try and minimize losses until you have the necessary number to fight back. Hearts of Iron 4 also changes up the industrial system in the game. In other games, you would use sliders to assign industrial capacity to production, consumer goods, and so on and so forth. Now you have 3 different types of factories. First is civilian factories, which are used to trade for resources, construct buildings, and automatically produce consumer goods depending on your country's economic laws. Second, you have military factories, which produces all your infantry weapons, all your tanks, and your airplanes. Finally, you have naval dockyards, which produce convoys and various other naval vessels. While there are more buildings, such as the nuclear reactor and the synthetic refinery, the primary producers are these three buildings. Although it's not much different than Hearts of Iron 3 or Hearts of Iron 2, I personally approve of this new approach to production. Like most of the game, it just feels a bit more streamlined, and to me it feels like I have more direct control on my actual production. I like being able to swap the factories around where I want them to be. On the discussion of production and creation, research has also been changed a bit. Where the Hearts of Iron 3 tech tree decided to create far more options than could ever really be researched in one game, Hearts of Iron 4 has gone back to the Hearts of Iron 2 approach, with general research options that unlock new units and technologies the further down you go. What I love the most about this new research tree is even small countries have a chance to keep up in technology as long as they focus on certain areas. Yes, this means that Mexico can actually build nuclear weapons by around 1945 if you tech right and have enough research slots. Some of you are probably sad and feel like now you can't customize your land armies like you could in Hearts of Iron 3 because of the simplified tech tree. Well, there is actually more customization now than there ever was. For example, in the production panel, when you're creating a tank or an airplane, you can customize the level of gun, engine, reliability, and armor of your tanks using army experience that is actually gained in your, hopefully, never-ending conflicts. This leads to your tanks having increased utility, even if they are a few years behind on the tech tree. It's worth mentioning the national focus system, as well as this allows you to customize your playstyle as whatever country you are playing as. For example, if you're playing as the Soviet Union, it gives you bonuses towards an anti-fascist playstyle or an anti-capitalistic playstyle, depending on who you are trying to ally with in the war. National focuses can also give bonuses towards factories, troop recovery rates, research slots, and so on. The last major chain I will discuss is the create faction feature of the game. In other Hearts of Iron games, you were limited to 3 different factions: the Comintern, Allies, and the Axis. In Hearts of Iron 4, you can actually create your own faction, or a preset faction, which is already available. For example, Italy can form the Novus Imperium Romanum, or it can join the Axis, the Allies, or the Comintern. I've actually played a game as Mexico where I created my very own South American faction called the Imperio de Sud, and proceeded to grab as many South American countries as I possibly could. It's actually pretty cool to see a system that makes staging coups all over the world a freaking treat. Now, while there's plenty more we could touch on in this game, I feel like I've hit the real meat of what I want to discuss, and as such, I want to start talking about some of the issues I have with this game. I feel like the biggest problem with Hearts of Iron 4, undoubtedly, is that the AI is just strange. After about 60 hours of playing this game, it's a mixture of unrealistically unpredictable, sometimes completely idiotic decisions from AI. For example, let's take Germany declaring war on the Netherlands, the United States, Denmark, and Belgium, despite already being steamrolled by France, the UK, and the Soviet Union. And then there's times where the AI seems too passive, like when units in a battle plan choose to not attack a province in front of them despite no enemy divisions being in sight. However, I think the most annoying AI issue I've seen by far involves coup d'etats. For example, let's say I'm playing as the Soviet Union, and I successfully stage a coup on Germany, creating a new communist German faction, who then starts a civil war, but then it immediately joins the Allies. Now, I imagine this is related to the world tension system that's in the game, but I just can't help but think it's really, really stupid. I mean, come on, shouldn't I get some sort of relationship boost, faction priority bonus for kickstarting their revolution in the first place? I don't think I can adequately convey to you how annoying it is to spend hours courting a nation just to have it swap over to the Allies, despite you seeming like the more promising faction. Another strange issue I see in this game is how some nations can become insanely broken. The only upkeep a nation has is its manpower. So if a country has a metric ton of manpower, then they can field tens of thousands of airplanes and hundreds upon hundreds of divisions. This causes powers like the UK, the Soviet Union, and the United States to become the de facto major powers no matter what the playthrough or the difficulty. Now, of course, with intense player intervention, these conditions may vary, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen the UK sporting an Air Force numbering 12,000 airplanes plus by 1944. Just so you understand, there's no shooting down an Air Force of 12,000 plus in any reasonable measure of time. I'm also a bit sad that only 2 scenarios are available at first, and that it doesn't allow for starting around 1933. Some say that's a bit early, but I feel like a scenario that started around 1933 would allow for a lot more political maneuvering. This is a much faster paced game than Hearts of Iron 3, and as such, having an earlier starter time would probably be better. Then again, maybe I'm just being nitpicky, and I'm sure we will be seeing mods very soon that address issues like this. These are pretty much my only issues with the game, and aside from what seems to be some slight AI issues and balancing problems, Hearts of Iron 4 is a great package. To be honest, I haven't had this much fun exploring a World War II themed strategy sandbox game in a while. And with my issues with the AI, it's very clear that even with the pace of this game, that Hearts of Iron 4 is meant to be more of a multiplayer game than a pure-on single-player experience. My final recommendation, if you are even remotely interested in grand strategy games, or are a newcomer to them, this is a great place to go. If you're a veteran of grand strategy games, this will be an addicting and welcome addition to your library, and I highly recommend it. And with that, that's all from me. See you on the battlefield, Commanders.